Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first of our In Conversation With series. Today, I'll be talking with Fiona Ball, Director of the Bigger Picture at Sky. My name is Tom Popple, and I'm Senior Manager for Climate Change and Sustainability at Natural Capital Partners. We've had a really good sign-up rate for the event today, particularly amongst large international businesses who would love to hear what Sky are doing and hear from Fiona herself. Just to run through a few logistics first of all, this webinar is scheduled to last 30 minutes. We're going to leave the final 5 or 10 minutes at the end for audience questions, so please do reach out to us. You're all muted in listen-only mode, so please use the panel on the right-hand side of the screen to submit any questions, and we'll go through them at the end. And this is interactive, so please do reach out with any and all questions that you have for this session. Just first of all, to kick off, we're going to have a quick poll. If you'd like to put through your responses there, it's just going to be on the screen quickly. So the first poll to open up here, what climate targets has your organization achieved? So please click on and select all that apply to you and your organization. So we have carbon neutral company, we have carbon neutral product or service, we have net zero, we have science-based targets, then we have other climate targets that may be different to the ones that are above there as well. So please just mark your response there for us. We'll just give you a few more seconds for the slow starters to make their selection. Perfect. There we go. Great stuff. Okay, so here are the results then. So just over half of you actually have a commitment already to become or are a carbon neutral company today. Just shy of 15% there have a carbon neutral product or service. And then 13%, same as that, have a long-term net zero target. And a third have science-based targets. So that's really interesting to see that, and great to see so many companies taking action today with carbon neutral company. So I'd like to kick off the quick overview of Sky's climate action. So Sky is aiming to become the most sustainable media and entertainment company in Europe, and it's well on its way. At the helm of Sky's sustainability strategy is Fiona Ball, who has evolved the program from carbon neutral company certification all the way back in 2006 through to a recent launch for carbon neutral productions, and with an overall net zero goal by 2030. So let's get into the meat of the discussion and say hello to Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Hi, nice to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Perfect, great for joining. So, let's start at the very beginning, really. So what got you into sustainability?
So, when a university got me into sustainability, when I was at university, gosh, some 25, nearly 30 years ago, sustainability wasn't really a thing. But the environment was, and geography was, and so I went to do a university at Bath University. I did environmental biology and English, and then after that, I decided I wanted to continue on my studies. So I went to study a master's at Brunel University, and that's where I really got into linking environmental sustainability, particularly with business, and how I could work within a business to improve the business's impact on the environment. So I went into sustainability from an environmental background, like I think the majority of people do, especially from my kind of age group. And then started working. I've always worked in the IT or telecoms or entertainment and media kind of industry. But it wasn't until I really joined Sky back in 2009, 2005, sorry, gosh, a long time ago now, that I started to really see, as well as the environmental kind of regulations and kind of the kind of reactive stance to environmental sustainability, that there were lots of opportunities in many organisations to really look at how a business can go beyond its day-to-day kind of running of environmental issues and really look at the positive kind of opportunities of really embracing environmental sustainability. So hence why I've stayed at Sky over kind of 15 years, because I think it's an amazing kind of business that really embraces environmental kind of opportunities as a broadcaster, where it can really raise and use its voice as a broadcaster to really engage other people, whether that's their customers, their viewers, or other businesses around the environmental impact that businesses have.
Yeah, great. And interesting there, you kind of leap in with geography and biology. Nothing wrong with geography. I'm a full geography nerd myself there. And Sky itself, though, evolved and has changed its program over time as well, and obviously with you at the helm. So, what drives that evolution and development at Sky around its sustainability and specifically its climate action program?
So I think what drives it is to always to listen to what its customers are asking us to look at and address. It's always got its customers' viewpoint and position at the forefront of any of our campaigns that we do. We've always understood that there's a real role for a broadcaster and entertainment company to kind of use its voice and use its channels, its Sky, Sky News and its entertainment channels and its documentary channels now, with Sky News and Nature and Sky Documentaries, to really engage and to raise awareness of particular issues of concern. And we have done that always, because actually our environmental footprint as a business, when you look at our direct business operations, is relatively small, with about 100,000 tonnes of carbon we emit across all of our kind of offices and our kind of our fleet across Europe. But the real opportunity is the engagement piece, is how we can kind of use kind of entertainment and social media and other channels to really keep environment at the forefront of people's minds. It's evolved over time, because actually what we do all the time is that we ask our customers, we poll our customers every quarter to understand people's concerns, awareness of particular issues, and how they want to get involved every kind of quarter. And we've evolved it all the time, because we've always looked at the environmental issues that our customers are concerned about. So back possibly 9 years ago, we did a campaign called Sky Ocean Rescue with Sky Rainforest Rescue with WWF, which was really looking at saving 1 billion trees in the Amazon rainforest in Acre. And the reason why we did that was, at the time we had quite a large environmental footprint in terms of paper use in magazines. But it was also the plight of the rainforest had come off people's agendas, and people had kind of very much felt at that time that it was something that had been addressed and had fallen off kind of people's kind of viewpoints. So our customers, when we reached out and asked them, they wanted us to look into the rainforest and really understand, although it's quite far away, what the plight of the rainforest was and what customers could do to really make a decision in their buying choices. So we did Sky Rainforest Rescue back with WWF then, and that went on for kind of 6 years. It had huge engagement. 1.7 million of our customers changed their behaviours or understood more around what they could do to protect our rainforest as a result of that engagement. And we raised over £9 million together with our customers to protect an area in Acre, which was the size of Belgium, so it wasn't insignificant. And then after Sky Rainforest Rescue kind of finished, we really kind of continued to focus on what our own impact was, but we felt there was a bit of a hole in what really we wanted to achieve, and that's when we started Sky Ocean Rescue. And Sky Ocean Rescue, which we launched back in January 2017, was really as a result of a conversation between my chief executive, Jeremy Darroch, and our head of Sky News, John Riley, looking at kind of the issues that were affecting us on a global scale still. And Sky News had recently done a documentary in Bermuda on something very totally different to plastics and ocean health. But they were really shocked by the amount of plastics that was in the water when they were doing this documentary. And they thought, well, look, I think there is something here. We need to look into it more and address it. And so that's when we decided that we would do Sky Ocean Rescue, and for the first time really closely with our news channel, because we kind of realised that we really wanted to reach as many people, and Sky News is played out to over 100 million people around the world, and raise the issue to such an extent that some policy changes and real changes would be made both in business and in government. So we launched Sky Ocean Rescue back in January 2017, predominantly around using our voice, so using our content to raise awareness of the issue. But then at the same time, a little bit later on in the year, in October 2017, we wanted to make our own further commitments about what we could do as a business and what we should be doing as a business. So at that point, we set targets to be zero single-use plastic free as a business across our operations, our products and our supply chain by the end of this current year. And we also decided that we're great at investing in new innovation and technology and platforms at Sky anyway. So we decided to launch Sky Ocean Ventures, which was an investment platform of 25 million over 5 years to invest in the new entrepreneurs and the startups that were looking at the alternatives to single-use plastic. And the reason why we did that was because very early on when we set our targets to be single-use plastic free, we realised there were going to be some challenges in our supply chain that we really couldn't fix yet and there wasn't a solution for. Shrink wrap is an example where we're finding we're having difficulty with, and polystyrene for sets and builds and stuff. So we thought it was really important for a business to also invest as we go through to find the solutions. So we've been on a journey. We've always looked at what we feel that the big issue, the big environmental macro issue is. That's possibly not high up on the agenda from a policy or business perspective than it should be, and really looked at how we as a broadcaster and lots of different channels can raise the awareness to such an extent that policy changes can be made.
It sounds, you're very transcendent, aren't you, to use that word a little bit. I mean, moving beyond what people would normally think your boundary of responsibility would be and your role in society, in the economy and the world for making positive change. And I wonder where that decision making came from. Like, was that something that came out of you and your team, or was that something that was very much in the management and the C-suite of the company?
Oh, it's very, I mean, now it's completely embedded across the whole area of the business. We've been doing this, as I said, for 15 years now, so it's integral to our culture. It's part of our DNA to not just the environmental issues, but responsible business in general across many different areas. But it's predominantly the reason for that. It's been led by some very incredible, passionate senior exec, that are involved. Jeremy Darroch has been our CEO for 10 years and has been leading the environmental kind of strategy and issues, ever since. And before him, Jeremy used to be the CFO, and before him it was James Murdoch. And James was also extremely passionate about environmental issues. So it's always has been, they've always seen the kind of opportunity right from the start of why Sky needs to, or could be involved in this, in the role that we could play. But also, by working with the execs, so we've had an environmental steering group, and as part of our, as part of the kind of governance structure, we've got a business, a bigger picture committee as part of our governance process, where every single senior exec across the business understands what their role is in terms of the environment, but other responsible business areas, and really looks at the opportunities that we can get involved.
Yeah. I know this is something from my side. Watching Sky over the years, I think it was Freddie Flintoff that went out into the rainforest, and recently I watched the Plastic Nile, and I couldn't believe that. I think it was only one research paper had gone into seeing microplastics in freshwater species in Africa. You kind of bring both ends. You've got this kind of mass public figures that can talk about these issues, but then you actually go down really deep into some technical issues, and people like myself wasn't fully aware that the challenges that are out there. I do wonder though, just as a follow-up question to the engagement you've had, we kind of look into Sky as a perfect case study, but you must have come across some challenges along the way, through the years of people not always getting their head around it, or maybe questioning sometimes why you should be focusing on certain things and others. And I wonder if there are any examples for the people listening around some challenges that you had to overcome that may be worth sharing.
Yeah, so I think there are always challenges. I mean, we went carbon neutral as a business, so as our direct business, our scope 1 and 2 back in 2006, May 2006. And I think there's always going to be challenges for businesses that take the first step in anything. And carbon neutrality was a very young thing at the time. So we did have challenges, and we worked with yourselves around why was it important? What does carbon neutrality mean? What does it mean for an organization? So we had challenges there, and to get over that, we've always been really transparent and clear about what we're doing and where the boundaries are and what we haven't done yet. So when we looked at our carbon neutrality, we made it very, very clear that we had a very good process in place in terms of measurement. We always look for the ways to make absolute reductions in our carbon intensity, and have set very public external kind of targets around our carbon emissions, and and produce a kind of a report each year showing our performance against that. And then really explained that the carbon neutrality piece was a way of balancing out our carbon emissions whilst we continue to reduce further. And that always has been our position. So the challenge is, for us, whenever we've come across a challenge, it's always been just full transparency of what we're trying to achieve, where we are now, what we haven't achieved, what our future plans are, and what we're doing as a result of it. In terms of I think other kind of challenges, I guess, when we have a look at it, it's really important that you have your own house in order as well. So you can't start communicating to customers or the general public on issues that you haven't addressed already internally. A big part of our environmental footprint, especially when we look at net zero, is our scope 3 emissions. So it's going beyond our carbon neutral status as a business, and looking at the whole value chain, so the emissions both in our supply chain and the use of our products in customer homes. And this has always been something that we are challenged on, but it's great to see what you're doing through your content and through the awareness, but what are you doing around the energy use of your products in customers' homes? And this is always something that obviously we work on really hard on, continuously looking at how we can increase the efficiency of our products, and looking at kind of product design going forward and how we can kind of reduce the impact there. So we, in addition to sort of like doing the communications piece of it, we have some really strong kind of processes in place which we communicate out around the life cycle assessments that we do across all of our products, the efficiencies that we're putting in our products, and how we're working with our suppliers, for example, around energy efficiency of our manufacturing sites and the investment of on-site renewables. So I think whenever you're challenged, I think it's a good thing to be challenged, because it shows that you're leading and you're going in the right direction, and they're strong kind of targets. But to be credible, you really need to back it up by why have you set the targets that you have, how are you measuring it, how are you going to report on it, and what processes have you got in place to reduce your footprint.
Yeah, great takeaway. And particularly on that point about action today as well as long-term deep decarbonization through your science-based targets. Let's just change pace slightly then. So we've moved beyond kind of your journey and Sky's journey, but let's just think about the future and climate change generally. And I guess a question here really, I mean, are you optimistic about us meeting our global climate goals? How do you feel about all that?
Well, I think we have to be optimistic about us meeting our global climate goals. I think it's great. I think there's more and more businesses that are taking leadership position and setting themselves targets around being net zero carbon, and I think that's great. I think it's great that businesses are looking at setting targets around and making sure they're aligned with the science. So signing up to the Science-Based Targets Initiative to understand what their role is and what carbon reductions they need to make. So I think I am positive. I think there's a lot of organisations now, big organisations that are setting their targets and have signed up to the UN Global Compact, 1.5 degrees kind of commitment. Business in the community have recently started their Challenge 2030 campaign, getting all ranges of businesses signed up, and I think that's really good. I think this has to be led by business. And I think businesses need to work together in their sector, because I think some sectors can move much faster than others. So, for example, our target is to be net zero carbon by 2030, which is a massive challenge, and it is science-based target. So, in that 10 years, we will halve our overall carbon, carbon emissions in absolute terms. But our sector can move relatively quickly. I understand that others can't, but it's really important that those that can do set really ambitious targets. It is really important to set ambitious targets, because if we are going to really make the changes that we need to make in the next 10, 20 years, we really do need to innovate and change and transform our businesses. We can't continue on with kind of incremental targets that we've had probably over the last 10 years when we look at our environment. It really needs to be, challenging enough so that we look at how we do business very differently and really innovate. So I think there's enough businesses there that have made those commitments already and are willing to share with others their journey and how they're planning on getting there, because the majority of lots of businesses' emissions are in the supply chain. So I'm very optimistic. This isn't a competitive thing. This is really something that if any one business is going to meet their targets, they're going to have to kind of share their journey and work with others, including those in their sector, to get there.
Yeah, and we talk about the supply chain, and it feels sometimes like the supply chain is this disparate kind of ether, but really supply chain is made up of companies that face the same challenges as every organization. And I guess in that way you can play a best kind of practice, best case or role model, and really give in that kind of 15-year plus journey and give them a sense of what they can do themselves. So look, Fiona, we're going to just pause for questions from the audience, because we have a few of those come through. So again, it's going to change gear and put some of those to you, if that's okay. I want to kind of go back to the engagement with consumers, the point you raised kind of midway through there. So this is the question then. So how much are your decisions about where to focus led by consumers through their feedback or research versus by your editorial leadership deciding on what the right thing is to do? So is it consumer kind of research versus kind of what your editorial or leadership want to do? How does that play out internally?
Gosh, I mean, I don't think either play, kind of wins there. I think it's a mixture of both. I think, obviously and it depends on what platform we're using to communicate to customers. So if it's on Sky News, it's very editorial and it's led by them, and it's led by the science, and it's led by where the kind of stories and the interest is. When it looks at Sky from a corporate perspective, looking at how we engage with our consumers through our marketing or through our other channels like Sky Sports, for example, it's very much around really listening to our customers and understanding how we can engage them best and what they need to know from us. So we've done lots of different kind of things over the past, particularly around Sky Sports. To be perfectly honest, we've done some great things, like we've worked with the Oval, cricket ground, and helped them go kind of single-use plastic free, and then really looked at ways that we can engage that audience through broadcast and also at the game itself. So I think it's led by both, but it depends on which is the main channel that we're looking at communicating.
Yeah, perfect. And maybe just picking up on the theme about businesses playing a role. I mean, next year the UK taking responsibility for COP. I mean, it's a huge opportunity for business to play a role, and just generally for, I guess, UK Inc. to be doing something on this agenda. So what role do you think in that particular environment should business be playing? And you mentioned about different sectors leading, but I guess from the media perspective, what should you be doing as an industry, kind of playing into the COP as well? So two parts of that question: business generally, and what do you think your sector should be doing?
So things will go a lot easier at COP and a lot faster if it has real, if if businesses can get behind and say, look, we're really supportive of kind of really strong, ambitious targets here across the world. We understand what our role is and what our emissions are, and we have supply chains worldwide, and we're happy for countries to make these ambitious targets. I think that will be massive support of the COP negotiations. So I think the biggest thing for all businesses to do is to have a look at where these collectives of case studies and commitments are being made worldwide that are going to be shared at COP. The UN Global Compact is one of them, but Business in the Community, WWF, lots of different organisations are trying to pull these together. So that's one thing I would say. Can set your targets, show visible external commitment that you're willing to to have strong targets in place. Share your case studies, share your journey with others to encourage others kind of to get behind. And I do think that sectors also need to come together. As I said, I think there's some real opportunities across the piece for all sectors to have a look at specifically what their role is in this climate, in the climate kind of negotiations. So, for example, with production, we've been working with you guys and Albert Consortium to really have a system in place to measure and reduce and then become carbon neutral for production companies, which are part of our supply chain. And we've done the same with Sky Sports. So Sky Sports are, the first sports broadcaster to sign up to the UNFCCC on climate change. And I think it's really important that lots of businesses look at how they can use their voice and their leadership to make sure that our government, particularly in the UK, has an opportunity to really set the standard, really.
Yeah, I've got to say, I mean, it is quite exciting looking at your sector, and specifically, I guess, the work that Albert are doing and how all this plays together. Because it does feel like there's a bit of momentum there to show what a sector can do. And I guess to that point about business getting together, it's about consensus building, and it's about confidence, showing that people can move together at a pace, and it doesn't have to be competitive necessarily within that. A question that kind of comes to mind, and one that's kind of come through the channel here, but maybe just rewording it slightly, is how do we get more businesses to start making ambitious goals? It's all very good that we want them to, and we think it's a good signal to pass to the government, particularly with COP, but how do we get people over that first hump? What is it that what should be the three things that if any companies are listening now, that they should really take away from the lessons that Sky has gone through, that you think would be them worth taking away from this session?
I think the biggest thing that needs to be done is setting an ambitious target, and in order to do that with an organization, you need to do quite a lot of hard groundwork around working with all the different areas of the business that actually have the biggest impact within the organization, or the biggest opportunities, to get them on board and to showcase what needs to be achieved and where the opportunities are for them to do it, so that once you bring and put forward a recommendation for a target, you've already done a lot of the hard work and getting buy-in from the key people that need to make those decisions. I think it's we don't, I think it's really using kind of other businesses that and kind of showcasing and showcasing what other businesses have done that have already set their targets, and the fact that how easy in some frame, if you kind of look at the big picture and then break down your emissions, it can actually be done to kind of achieve your target. I think when you're talking about net zero as an as a big concept, it's quite big and it's quite intangible. It's quite difficult to know how you're going to get there. But for example, in our supply chain, we have a third of our emissions are in our supply chain. It's about 700,000 tonnes across 11,000 kind of suppliers. but actually 80% of our carbon emissions are within 250 of our suppliers. So if you start to break it down, you can always say, already kind of get to understand that if we work then with 250 of our suppliers and really engage them to understand how they can measure and reduce their footprint, then you've got a step of how you're going to achieve your target. So I think it's really understanding your carbon footprint as an organisation really, really well, and kind of breaking it down to understand what are the steps that you need to do to achieve where you want to go, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, great. And you know what it is? Once you break it down like that, it is far more manageable. I won't say simpler, but certainly it's easier to build from that once you have that. So thanks a million for taking the time and answering our questions. So with that, our conversation has come to an end. So I'd like to thank you all once again for attending and the questions that were put forward, and thank you, Fiona, for speaking today. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us and email us. The webinar recording will be available on our website and will be sent out to everybody very shortly, so please feel free to share it with your colleagues, and do look out for the next conversation in this series, which will be with Mukesh Arunkundram, the Head of Global Operations at Logitech, which will be on the 29th of July, same time, so that's 4 o'clock British time on Wednesday. So thanks a million again, Fiona, thank you for your time. Have a great afternoon and goodbye.